Hi, I'm Ross Callaghan, and I'm about to start another model ship. Over the years, I've gathered lots of bits and pieces left over from making model ships, and so I thought I'd like to find a project that I can use some of the stuff that I've gathered over the years. So I had a bit of a hunt around to try and find some plans for scratch building model ships. And I found freeshipplans.com. And on there I found some plans for this tugboat, the Antio, very commonly made model among model shipbuilders. So I thought I'd have a go at that and use up some of my bits and pieces anyway that I've gathered over the years. So this plan, it's not very clear in terms of being able to read instructions, but it does show you what's involved in building the model, but it also has the various parts and which you stick onto wood, and then you cut it out and build the model like that. So it's very much a scratch build, but with quite a few challenges along the way because there isn't really very good instructions. Downloading and printing the plans means that the model is going to be about 75 millimeters wide and about 300 long. So you stick the cut out pieces onto your wood, cut it out, and away you go. Mostly I'm using base wood, and the process is pretty much the same for all the wooden model ships I've done, where you get a keel and then frames, attach the frames to the keel, then put on a lower deck, and in this case another deck above that, and then a further deck above that. And I decided this time to help the planking process that I would fill in both the stern and the bow with balsa so that it would just make the planking easier. I happen to have lots of this fine timber here that I thought might be useful for the planking because it's so flexible. So I tried that, and actually I found it was extremely difficult to work with because it's so thin and so light, and especially at the back here where the distinctive shape of a tugboat requires some funny angles for the wood to go. So I thought, what'll I do? And I decided to put some cardboard on the back of the planking to give it something to work against and to stabilize it. And then I had the idea of, well, why not do the whole ship in cardboard, and that'll give a nice frame for the planking to go on top of. So I started covering the other side with cardboard, and that came together really nicely. And then I thought, well, that looks good, so why don't I fill that and see if I can make the cardboard do the job of the planking. And that turned out really quite well too. So after lots of filling and sanding, it looked like this, and that encouraged me to take the planking off the other side and do it in cardboard. And very quickly I was able to create the shape, which is useful for small models like this, which have got lots of angles. So good learning point there. Cardboard as framing, not too bad. Here's a good technique I discovered. When you've put all the filler on, get your finger in some water and smooth it out. And it makes a really nice surface, saves a lot of sanding later on. The next step was to put on the gunnels, and that gives a lot more strength to the cardboard there above the deck. Well, the decking's now all in place, and in doing this, it was a case of what degree of perfection am I allowing myself to accept? Very typical for making of model ships. Well, the hull of the little tugboat is now pretty much complete. I've been able to shape it so it looks pretty good. And the decking there now looks really good too. Next, I'm going to get on with making all the parts that go on top of the decks. Started by making the cabins and the wheelhouse, and decided to put cellophane in the windows, make a nice deck around them, and they all seem to come together quite nicely. And then putting those two parts together, found a piece of bamboo for the chimney, and I had to buy vents. They're too difficult to make. Made some little steps there to get up to the upper deck. Then I started making the hatches that go just behind the cabins. Gear up at the front of the ship, made a nice little winch there. And at the back, more hatches. So the main structures are ready now for the tugboat, so it's time to start painting the hull. I'm using a test pot for the paint, and I find it's very hard to get a nice line between two colours, so I use a little piece of cardboard and put that along like that, and you get a nice clean line. Next I put on the screw and the rudder there at the back, and the painting now is pretty much complete. Starting to put the various parts there on the deck. And it's finally time to glue on the cabins and the wheelhouse. When you're doing a scratch build, you can change things as you go because there's no right and wrong way of doing things. And now that I've put the red here on the funnel, it seems as though the blue there on those hatches is not right. So I'm going to repaint them so that the colour scheme suits better the whole look of the model. I decided to do the hatches in white, and so once they were in place, then it was a case of finally putting on all the other bits and pieces on the decks there. Right, from the rear, more things in there behind the wheelhouse, and up the front at the bow end as well. Then I put on some tyres and fenders, and made some wee anchors too, till finally all the various parts were in place. Well, my model of the little tugboat is now finished, and it's been a real pleasure making it. The things that I've learnt on this particular build are that you can get free ship plans and make a scratch model like this relatively easily. The whole thing cost about $20 in bits and pieces that I had to buy. The next thing I learnt was that it's quite a good idea to use a cardboard for doing the planking on a small model like this. There's a lot of filling and sanding and painting involved to try and get it smooth, but you can get quite a nice shape to a model relatively easily. The other thing I learnt is that for a model like this, it's important that you include as much detail as possible, and that's what I've tried to do here. It makes it interesting to look at and gives the whole thing a sense of authenticity. So there you are, my model of a little tugboat. A thoroughly pleasant experience to make, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching the video of it too. Maybe it'll inspire you to make a model like this.